Welcome, everyone. We are starting a new series. This series is Rav Tzadok Cohen. Tzadok Cohen is a very fascinating rabbi in the 1800s. Rav Tzadok was the genius after the Vilna Gaon in the Litvish or the Misnagid world, non-Hasidic world, who later in his life became a Chassid, became a Chassid's Rebbe. And so Rav Tzadok really combines everything. It's quite amazing. His brilliance is not something that we understand. At age 1, he would make blessings before he nurse. I mean, so we're talking about something absolutely incomprehensible for our levels. But his svarim are considered sometimes difficult because they have a lot of keys, a lot of quoting of different things from all over. It's like 300 pages. That's one sentence. We just connects everything. Um, but it really is so key to understand things that I want to do this book with you. Do one of his farm, one of his books called Machshavas Charetz, um, the quick mind, the thought system. And what I'm going to do is, for those of you who know, we started a new Kolel, Baruch Hashem, in Eretz Yisrael, or Panimi, and we're learning this book in detail. There are recordings of the book reading each word and explaining it in a more complicated way. But I'm going to try to summarize the book. We're going to go through piece by piece, and I'll try to summarize the great thoughts of Torah of the great Rav Tzadok Cohen. So we're going to start from the very beginning. He says, "Hamachshava, the thought is the main person as is known." Now, this is not so simple. What do you mean your thought is the main part of you? So first we have to understand what is thought, what is the root of thought, and what is the what's called the levushim, the outgrowths of your thought. Kirhurim floats thoughts loading into your mind. That's not what we're talking about now. Now, what Rav Tzadok says is like this. First, we have to understand there is the main thought in your head. That's going to be called the hidden thought, the machshava stima, hidden. Now, here's where he's going. This is very, very deep. But it says that that God breathed, Hashem breathed life into Adam, creation, into mankind. And it says in the Zohar, it says that Madanafa, whoever blows into something, blows in from themselves. And that's the aspect that we have a part of our soul that's called a chelik el a divine aspect. This is very, very deep and be very, very careful with it. But there's an aspect of us where the highest part of our soul is actually connected to its source. There are other aspects of the soul. The soul doesn't have part. That's a misconception. But the soul itself, the holy soul, the neshama elokis, the godly soul, the divine soul, manifests in various ways, and therefore there is a part of us that is connected to our source and is called a divine aspect, so to speak. Now, how does that work? So there are lower parts that are not considered to be the divine aspect. Let's talk about there are three different components, what's called kalim vessels of the person. There is the top of the person, the head, there's the middle section, and then there's the lower part. These three represent a certain paradigm. The lower part, which is considered to be led by the organ called the kaved, the liver, that is the part that of your soul called the nefesh. The nefesh is the aspect that is in charge of your physical process. The nefesh has, according to Balatanya, there's different ways it understands it. The nefesh has a component that is completely not necessarily a godly component, but it is called the nefesh bahamis, the life force. That's why I say the animal nefesh, but I avoiding that term because people have a different concept of it then. But the nefesh is the nefesh chiyunis, which is the life force. So this really touches. There's some aspect in the lower aspect of the soul, or the nefesh, where there's a connection to what's called the nefesh bahamit, the nefesh chiyunis, the life force. That life force, what happens is that is where various traits that a person exists, which can be used for good or for negative. Okay, so there's a part of it where it's not divine, but it's not bad. It just can be used in both ways. And part of our goal in life is to take the life force and connect it and bring it up back to the divine aspect of our soul. The nefesh, the nefesh, the life force. It says it connects to the person through the blood. It's very. What does that mean exactly? That's one of the reasons you can't eat blood. Says the soul is in the blood, which means the life force. Now, what happens here is that Aryeh Kaplan it says that the life force, because the Arizal, the great Kabbalah Arizal, says that it's the refined part of the blood. He says that has to do with the synapses in the brain, which is the electrical impulses. That is the point when it means the blood, but it's the point where the lowest aspect of life spirit is not called a ruchni, a divine or a spiritual component. That's even why probably you see people that do, let's say, I don't know, let's talk about Tai Chi, which I know a little bit about. Tai Chi, they try to move the energy. Well, where is this? Is this divine? The answer is no. It's already something in the physical world that's connected to the physical world. It's not something really in class where it's spiritual, which means ruchani. It's really not. It's maybe the highest part in the physical world because you can't really sense it. It's hard to measure it and to monitor it. But it's a connection, it's a link that's going to be linked back up to the divine aspect of the soul. So the lower part of us, the kaved, the which is in charge of the lower part of the body, that really is the aspect of the physical component, and it even connects to what's called the life force entirely. There's the middle section of a person that is called the ruach, and that the heart is, so to speak, in charge of that. And that's another aspect of our soul that connects us. And this really, in a certain sense, is the central person. Why? Because the lower part of you is below your level. And if you look, the lower part of us, the legs, are to bring us someplace that we're walking. The reproductive organs is to create a next generation. So in a certain sense, the nefesh, which is controlled by the kaved, by the liver, which is all blood, is really lower than the true level of a human being. True level of a human being is really called the heart, the middle area. And the heart, so to speak, has in the sage, it says there's a side that pushes to good and a side that pushes to bad. And that's where the action is of the decision making of the person. I feel I want to do this. Should I? Should I not? So that's really, in a certain sense, the aspect called ruach that is a component of the neshama also, or a manifestation of the soul. But that's the part that really the main part of the person exists. What I want to do, what I don't want to do, should I do it? Do I become that? When I choose properly in that area, I elevate the lower parts of myself, literally. Get too mystical for that. If I decide to act properly, then my desires become realigned to the higher essence of myself. That's called the midsection. Now, the top part of a person, called the mochin, the mind, so that in a certain sense is above the level of our torso, who we really are. And what that really is like an aspect of a malach, a spiritual force, a higher part of our souls that directs us on how to act. And that's why if you go, it says in the Zohar, if you take the moach, the mind, the letter mem, and the heart, which is in charge of the middle part of this manifestation of our soul, called the lev, the heart, and then you take the bottom part called the liver, which is the kaved, and you spell the letters mem, lamed, kaf. Kuf. Kaf spells the word melech, because then you're a king if you are being directed by the higher part of your soul. If you do it backwards, if your desires push your emotional level, the middle part is called the emotional or the speech level. And the lower part, we said, is the physical level. It pushes your emotional level, and that pushes now how you think. It spells the word kalem, right? The liver, kaved, lev, heart, mind, moach, spells the word kalem, which means a disgrace. The person's then in disgrace. So what happens here is the person really, the action of your decision is in the midsection called the heart. But what Tzadok is saying here is that the main person means your unique aspect of your soul is the part that is in or connected to your mind. That's already the aspect called neshama, and neshama is already called a chelik elokam mimal, a divine aspect in the person. Now, it can't be misunderstood here because this aspect of neshama is not in the person, not inside the person. Okay, it can't be limited. It's a soul, and therefore, it's the way it says it in the Zohar. It says that it's like throwing sparks of Torah understanding to your mind. So the mind can be called the seat of the neshama of this godly aspect of our soul that is above us, and that's what it really is. And that's why when people try to study the brain, they don't understand. The brain's a certain aspect of gray matter. But what it contains, information, is a lot bigger than the actual physical matter, because it's linking back up to your aspect of soul that is beyond and is already going into connecting to. So what happens here, I wanted to start with Tzadok says that the first aspect of yourself is the central part of the person. The main person is the mind, is the soul in the mind, the godly parts in the mind. He doesn't mean that that's really is above what you normally are. Your free will is really from your heart. You feel and how, and that's why there's an argument like who's the king, the heart of the person or the mind of the person, and they work in tandem because when we feel things, I feel I want to do this. I feel this is something so that when we do is often is we actually make our minds justify what I feel in my heart. That's not good. At the same time, if I think something and I'm not feeling it, I'm trying to push it into my heart, it's very hard to do. You need to create this dynamic where the mind and the heart work in such a way that the mind understands what is right, make sure the heart feels that, and then the heart actually wants that, and it works in tandem with what the mind actually thinks. Otherwise, your thoughts will be askew. So the beginning of this book starts out with this concept that the main person has to do with the thoughts that come to the mind. The Tzadok is very clear now. He says, wait a minute, if you think about it, the root thought of your thinking, who's aware of that? Who touches that? Where do ideas even come from? And he's just called an einful. It fell into the head. It's something above. So the thoughts that you have during the day, the things that float in your head, that is not the central person. That is not. That's called yes, there is a kernel that's hidden away there. That is the real thought. That is the connection back to your source. But there's so many layers that go outside of that are called the clothing of the real thought, and those float in your head, and that is not the central person. As a matter of fact, Tzadok says it's almost impossible for anyone, any of the great tzaddikim, to not have any false things floating in the head, because the actions you do are restricted to your actions. Your thoughts, very hard, it keeps floating in your head. And that's why you're not punished if the thought floats in your head. The problem with the thought floating in your head, when you start to maintain it and to elaborate on it, it's to dwell on it. But the things floating in your head, it's almost impossible for a person to go and to control that. But when a person touches the central part of their thinking, they actually think and they meditate for a little bit and they touch the root of their thought, what they really, really are about, which is very, very hard to do, that is automatically connected to the heart. That's called craving lobes parts. That's called two parts that never disconnect. It's a male female dimension that connects, and a person thinks and really tunes into who they really are, thinks of what they are. There's a point where that touches now the feeling in the heart, okay, and then that could translate into action. But what we have to understand now, this is the beginning of this piece. It's going to get very deep. Understand this basic thing. According to what Tzadok says, since the thought really in the hidden place is the root of who you are, that is also where the greatest danger lies. And that is the place where the Yetzer Hara, where the Nachash, the snake in the story, the serpent in the Garden of Eden, that is where it attacks. Where does it attack? Into the world of illusion. Because now a person, if my central part is my thinking, and I'm not getting to the root of it, the root of it is connected back to my source. But in the thinking, what happens is once it puts into your mind an illusion of something that's not real, that becomes the root of all the problem. That's why the serpent says to Adam, Vis and Kelokim, you can be God. What does that mean? That means that he put into his mind an illusion, a break in the thought process from where the thought was going to be clear and correct and rooted in its essence, and now it became diluted. And that becomes the beginning of the problem. And this we're going to talk about in great detail, the power of the illusions of our lives and how to overcome them. So again, the mind in that sense is your connection. It is the root that connects you back to your source, and that's the higher aspect of yourself. The danger that's going to happen there is when you will be deluded. And that's why he says, Adam, who was the handiwork of God, was so holy that when it entered an illusion into his mind, he was actually starting to think, I could be like God. Now, this sounds crazy for us. I mean, who can, but it's actually a verse in the Torah. It says, Visam Kedoshim, you should be holy, because I'm holy, God says. So we have to imitate God. He's holy, so be holy too. So the verse says, afterwards says, I am Hashem. I say I'm Hashem. So it says, you might think you could be holy just like me. Yeah. Who thinks he'd be holy like God? He says, this is not for us, but just the concept for us, is a person who really gets holy or who is working in that level. Once the illusion will pull into his mind, he's striving to be his root of who he is, and the illusions enter his mind, he could actually be deluded, think he could become God, really. And it says that if somebody really becomes holy like Adam, the Yetzer Hara will keep chasing him. The negativity will keep trying to get that illusion in his head because he's playing with on the highest level. And Tzadok says that is exactly what happened to the false messiahs that we know of. Shabtai Tzvi, Oso Ish, the whole religion. So these people, what happened was they were fasting and they were trying to do this thing, and they weren't touching the essence of who their thought was. They thought they were. They're trying to be holy, and then the illusion came in, actually fell out, and they thought that they were God. Us, we have to say, we connect to the root of our thoughts, which is connected back to our source. We will not be like God, but we will be connected to God. We will be with Hashem, to Hashem, from Hashem. We'll be connected, but not the illusion that a person will make and say, I will be like God. It's like a person says to his kid, when the kid says, I want to be like my father. Why? Because I come from my father. I want to go to my father. But when I say I want to be like him, I don't need him, and I'm my own thing, that is the ultimate illusion. And that is what we're talking about here, the power of the mind, because the mind's root really is connected to the source. And when the illusions come in, danger will happen. We're going to see next time how to start controlling and mastering the illusions that fool us, unfortunately, day in and day out.